Okay, crisis averted. So now it's back to today's original plan, which is prep a pot with soil to put a rose into, and that rose is gonna be this one. Prep the pot, dig this rose out, put it in the pot, and then dig this hole big enough to transplant the pinky peach rose from the bed over there to here, and then hopefully get all this cleaned up to direct sow some poppies and some cornflowers. Oh, and then I've also got some jade bush beans and some Oregon snow peas that I want to get planted that I pre-germinated. I don't want anything too rich because I also don't think that this rose is gonna grow true to form because it's sprouting underneath the graft line. And honestly, I'm shocked it even sprouted at all because I thought it was dead and I thought I had even dug it up out of this pot. But I've got a pot and I've got some dirt, so. So this is just old potting soil from existing pots that has perlite. I'm gonna mix a tiny bit of compost into it. I've actually got these already mixed up, which I want to replace with better stuff. Just a little bit of compost mixed in. Also want to make enough room to dig the hole for the rose that's going here. And I think I'll also move the sweet pea back a little bit. And I'll get that watered in at the same time I plant the other rose here. Also have, okay, there's the drip line. Okay, so this is Violet's Pride, maybe. See, sometimes it's helpful to have junk everywhere. I'm gonna put all the spare soil in here. Okay, so here is the kind of graft line, and you can see where the rose previously branched out of before it died. And this new growth is well below the graft line. And I'll get this filled up with more soil. Can't remember how much worm activity was here last time when I planted that rose, but this soil is very clay, but there is worm activity, so. And the rose I'm transplanting here is going in between two existing roses. I've dug the hole slightly to the left of the middle because the rose on the right side is an absolute unit. And even though it was listed as a shrub rose, it is practically its own continent. Went ahead and grabbed a bucketful or a half bucketful of the dirt that this was in because it came out pretty cleanly. That was like, I'm assuming the main stem that had rotted away. And I'm gonna try to plant like this, where the ground level is here. I'm gonna plant it facing this way. I think it's okay to leave some of the smaller roots intact because that will feed the worms. And this is just lightweight potting soil because I don't want to burn it with compost. Okay, this was the old rose hole. And now I'm thinking, since I already have the hole dug, why don't I put a fig there? And if I hate it or if it doesn't work, I just dig it up. Because the snowball is trying to come back to life. And yes, it was only after I put all of the dirt back, or transferred the dirt from over there, that I thought about this. So. And this spot does get maximum sun, so it's like in the summer, like 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., give or take. So this is the soil that was by the house. I don't think I want to bury the, what do they call that? The root canopy, the root hat. Okay, back to the, what I think is a violet's pride, but is under the graft. And even though it's under the graft, I still don't want to bury the graft, so I'm making sure that it doesn't get buried. And I think, especially seemingly with roses, it's Murphy's Law. This was my favorite one, and it all but died. And the knockout rose that I moved to the back corner was not my favorite, was not doing well, and now it's flourishing. I need to find a place to put this and get it watered in. Okay, what about right here?
I decapitated my peace love turtle, and there's nothing a little bit of super glue won't fix.
Also got these staked, some that are crisscrossed in teepee formation and some just straight up, and did apply some sluggo. This is the garden rich, which is heavy in sand. It's got like manure and kelp, and I'm gonna try it here to replace all of the dirt that I took out from the leafy gall scare. So I'm just gonna push all this mulch back and then replace it. Okay, well, the worms look happy. I'm gonna wait. I'm not gonna fill this area yet, just until I know that this drains well and will acclimate well. I don't know what all these little grasses are, or if that is truly nodding onion.
Hey y'all, it's Editing Sarah, and between the time that this was filmed, which was a few days ago, and today, I've learned that this is field garlic or onion grass, which is Allium vineal, and I've never seen this before, but I found some here in my raised beds, and I've also found some in another bed when I went to plant some more sweet peas the other day. Yes, I planted more sweet peas, and it's edible but highly invasive here in North America, so I'm gonna be very diligent and make sure that I go in with my hoary knife and get the entire thing pulled out with the bulb and roots so that it doesn't continue to spread.
This is just native potting soil, seed starting mix, and compost. And native potting soil is like old potting soil.
I'm potting up this purple echinacea that I had previously divided. I think this will be its 3rd year, but this is just one singular division from the mother plant. And normally I'd say absolutely not to this small of a pot, but hopefully this will force me to get it planted somewhere else sooner rather than later. This cherry laurel is evergreen and offers fantastic privacy year-round, but I do need to be better about pruning it regularly to avoid this fungus that shows up on the leaves. I usually start by taking off the most obvious pieces, and in this case it's the top, and then I remove a lot of the volume from the sides, which was growing into the lilac that's right next to it. And in the beginning, I'm always super conservative with my cuts. Like, I'll make a cut and I'll step back and look, make a cut, step back and look, and then there always comes this point where I just go for it. And for most things that I'm pruning, I focus on getting rid of anything dead or diseased, old or weak growth, and any crossing branches. Then I really like getting in there and opening up the middle to allow for more airflow. And I'll fine tune the shape, but I do always come back the next day with a fresh set of eyes and take some more off. And it may look wonky for a bit, but I know that any gaps will fill in no time. And a couple videos back, you will have seen me harvest purple dead nettle and give it a rough chop before placing it in a bucket of water. And in just 11 days, that beautiful bucket has turned into the most putrid thing I've ever smelled. So I held my breath while I dumped the entire thing at the base of the cherry laurel. And I did water it in a little bit, which I think helped the smell not to linger.
Today's the day. It all comes down to this. No pressure. Taking dahlia cuttings for the first time from tubers that I grew from seed last year that I woke up early indoors under the grow lights in Ziploc bags. And I divided these for the first time ever early this year. This is Shooting Star 2. So this is a Shooting Star seed that I started last year, one of its tubers. And then its sister is also doing really well.
Waking up my tubers early means that I can have blooms earlier and or take cuttings earlier. And if my cuttings root, it means I'll have that many more plants of that dahlia variety and I can still plant the tuber out. And at the time of this cutting, I was still over 5 weeks out from my average last frost of April 25th.
All right, it's a couple days later and I am back inside. It's been so windy here, so I figured let me just get out of the wind. This is the other shooting I want to take cuttings from, but I also want to show you the Shooting 2 that I did take cuttings from the other day. They're looking quite nice. They were a little bit wilty and I was a little nervous, but I think that was just transplant shock. Most plants are gonna have transplant shock if you obviously cut them to their nubs. But most of the time when you transplant something, it does go into a little bit of shock, which is totally normal. Make sure you water it in really well. This soil is moist. I will give it a little bit more water, but this is my seed starting mix, so it does retain water very well. If you have not yet watched that video, I will link it here.
I did run and get some compost, so I've mixed a little bit of that into this round. I'd say it's about 1/3 compost, 2/3 seed starting mix.
Fresh razor blade. This is just a facial razor blade that I use.
Once my dahlia has at least 3 sets of leaves, I'll cut straight across the bottom set, and this is my cutting.
So my first cut is gonna be here, straight across. And then my second cut is gonna be here. So we'll put this to the side because I want to make sure I get each of these nodes in my cutting because that's where it's going to root. I'm going to cut this straight down the middle. I'm going to go ahead and cut off this bottom piece straight across and then cut this piece straight down the middle. I am going to try to see if I can root this teeny tiny piece. And before I place these in the growing medium, I'm going to go ahead and cut these leaves in half so that the plant can focus on growing roots instead of these leaves, and the moisture won't rush to the leaves. Some dahlia varieties have a little bit more of a curled leaf. So if this is the case for your dahlia that you're taking a cutting from, you can just encourage the fold in half and cut it that way.
And then take a dauber. I'm using a stainless steel kebab skewer. You could use a pencil. Then make a few holes at the edge of your pot and gently stick each cutting in. You want to make sure that the entire node is covered because that's where the roots will grow from, but you also want to make sure that none of your leaves, even if they're cut in half, are touching the soil, and get them watered in really well. I'm using a mycorrhiza powder in my water. I've linked it below in case you're interested, but it's not necessary. But I have seen incredible root structure from the seedlings that I've used the mycorrhiza powder on. If your soil wasn't sopping wet when you inserted your dahlia cuttings into it, and it sinks a little when you first water it, go ahead and add some more soil to it because you want to make sure that those nodes are fully buried, but again, your leaves not touching the soil.
And I just gave that a fresh cut. I'm just going to stick that in the middle because why not? The worst it'll do is rot or wilt or burn to a crisp. I am going to place this right next to the other cuttings.
What if the world had more of your smile? What if the wind could spread your love? What if your sweetness could reach everyone? There'd be no wars. Maybe the birds will sing about your heart. Maybe the trees will whisper the word. Maybe the sun will spread your joy to the ones who lost their hope. Fill my head with roses. I can't help but dream away. Standing on a field with you and flowers everywhere.
I'm first going to start by filling this 64 cell air pruning tray up with some potting soil. So the local potting soil that has compost in it, and then I just added perlite for drainage. Never used one of these before. I'm so excited. This is so nice already. Like, look how easy that is. I've not sifted this, so there are some sticks, but these seedlings are, for the most part, established. I'll just pick out any that stick out too much. This is Bee's Choice and Cancan Girls, and these are floret seeds that I purchased. So I'm gonna start here with Bee's Choice, and I'm gonna go my left to right. This is crazy. Maybe I shouldn't have filled these up first. Oh no. I think I'm gonna dump this out and start over. Okay, dump them mostly out. I think most of it went there. I'm gonna water these in as I go. And this is mycorrhiza mixed up. That way I can also see if I need to add more soil. Okay, I grabbed a knife and a skewer. I think I'm gonna water all of these just so that I'm compacted as possible at the bottom, so that then it's hopefully less of a mystery how much I lose once it kind of shrinks. Because these do have giant holes in the bottom, so I don't wanna let the soil just all fall through.
This was my first time using plug trays, and I do have to say, if it's not already obvious, that there is quite a steep learning curve. And up until this point, I'd just been hoarding nursery pots, and I'll never stop hoarding nursery pots, don't worry. But I've been using nursery pots and soil blocking and cake pans and baking sheets. I also use these plastic baskets from Dollar Tree. You can see this brown one that I'm plucking the dahlia starts out of. These are quite old, so I don't know if they still sell these exact ones, but I'm sure they sell something like it. And at the beginning of every year, I always start to save my strawberry clamshells, blueberry clamshells, milk cartons, anything that I typically recycle that would work well for seed starting. And this was the first year I actually thrifted new, well, used cake pans and baking sheets. And I must have lucked out because I found this huge, like cafeteria style baking sheet that you see me potting up on here. This video doesn't even do it justice. This is the same pan that your elementary and middle school would serve you those little rectangle pizzas on every Friday. And it's so nice to do stuff like this on, but also corral a million little pots or solo cups or whatever it is that I'm potting up in. I think this was the most expensive one. It was $4, but to me, it has been so worth it. So I'm definitely keeping giant pan on my thrift wish list for a while, at least till I can find a few more of these, because I could see these being handy for so many things even throughout the year. Anyways, I'm potting up into literally anything I can get my hands on, and I definitely need to be better about getting things potted up as soon as I see green growth, because as wonderful as my seed starting mix is, it doesn't have any nutrients in it. All it's really good for is retaining moisture so that seeds germinate. So I found that anything that I leave in the seed starting mix too long that has new growth is very likely to dampen off, which just means that the seedling kind of just shrivels up and dies because it's so waterlogged. So if you can't get your seedlings out of the seed starting mix quick enough, make sure that you're only bottom watering, and you could even go a little bit longer than you probably think you should in between each watering. And the soil that you see me potting up into here is a mixture of potting soil and my local landscaping supply store's raised bed mix, which has a lot of sand in it, which is great for retaining water, but is way too compacted even with perlite mixed in for a container. And I know there are a lot of different seedling and potting mixtures you can buy, as well as recipes out there that you can make yourself, but I am continuing to experiment with my own local materials to figure out what works best, so make sure you're subscribed if you're not already, and I'll keep you updated. And as much time as I've spent starting stuff from seed, I can still look at people on YouTube or Instagram and feel like I'm behind. But the reality is that we're all in different growing zones. We all have different last frost dates. Even somebody, 10, 15 miles from me could have a completely different microclimate in their backyard. Some people are still under 2 feet of snow. Some of us have had an abnormally dry and warm winter and spring. At least I know we have here in the Pacific Northwest. And it seems like everything abnormal is the new normal. So I'm just trying to actively stay in the present and enjoy the process, because for me, it's never really going to be about the final product. Of course, the goal is to have a garden that supports biodiversity and is beautiful to spend time in, is beautiful to harvest flowers from and arrange them in a vase to bring them inside. But somehow the most beautiful part of it all is the magic of growing stuff from seed. So comment below. I want to know what you're growing from seed this year. Tell me if you're growing something new for the first time, and what are you most excited to be growing this year? I'm serious, I want to know. So comment down below and like this video if you like this video, and if you haven't already, subscribe so you never miss an upload, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.